As I reflect back, my father started out in metalworking many years ago at a company called Chalmers that most of us are aware of. He worked in the factory. The story has it that his whole family had to work in the factory. They had a one-bedroom house, and as one of them came home during the first shift, the next would go on the second shift, and the third person would go on the third shift, and that's the way they had to keep going to support their family. He started out in the metalworking industry and worked his way through Chalmers, becoming more valuable to them, a lead person, a foreman. And then eventually, he moved on, started to work for a couple other men in the stamping industry. And before you know it, he was part owner of Attico Steel Products and president of that company and president of Production Stamping Corporation and Production Tool Corporation. Sooner or later, he kind of figured out, hey, I could probably go on my own and do this.
He had all the contacts, he had all the knowledge, he had everything he needed. He needed a building to get started. So he and my mom decided that they're going to take a second mortgage out on the house, and they bought an empty factory. The equipment he started with was definitely used, but it's all he had. Chalmers was his first customer. He'd already been doing business with Chalmers, that was his in. They gave him some work to help him get going. I remember when he bought a 110-ton gap frame press and how proud he was. Nothing big, nothing fancy, but it was brand new. That press had the ability to run on continuous, meaning that it would keep going up and down until you brought it to a stop. My mom was Kapco's very first employee. I started there in '76. I was 14, and I worked right alongside her. She worked on the presses, she'd lift bar steel and ran bars through presses and made pieces. She was just one of the other employees. And we had fun.
My parents, of course, were both very loving, and Mom was always there raising her kids. Mom was definitely the proverbial stay-at-home mom, and super loving, super caring, always worried about everybody, always thinking about us kids, and caretaker for all, including my father. My dad, of course, had come from a bit of a military background and a bit of a rigid individual. He was about as teddy bearish and as loving and happy-go-lucky as you could ever even imagine. And then there were times he was about as stern and as rigid as a drill sergeant or a police sergeant. His tough love for us paid dividends to us, just as Mom's did. Soft side and the tough side made us who we are today, for sure. And then as I got into the high school years, I spent a lot of my summers coming into the factory and, running some machines and doing certain stuff for part-time work. We needed it. It was all on hands on deck at times. So I thought about where I might go and what I might do, and off I went to Madison for law school, but I didn't have enough money. So then I decided to come home and work with my dad for just a little bit. 1985 is really the time frame that I started in the office, and came to a place that was pretty antiquated. Rotary phones, there was a fax device that was out at the time. We had just gotten the Apple computer, and there was probably 30 people maybe. Stepped in and started working with my dad, and got to appreciate really what he was doing and the art and the science behind it, and had a lot of fun. Going on a sales call with him. My brother was there, TJ, at the time as well. His expertise was tool and die, and so he and I made a great pair. I learned a lot from my brother TJ, just like I had learned from my dad, and although it wasn't all that long, to spend time working with Sharon and Shirley as well. And it was a family. And not only was our family a part of the business, but the people that were around us were talked about as family and part of our life. Then my dad got ill. The business was effectively turned over, and the decisions that I would make and that my brother would make ultimately impacted not only our immediate families, but the employee base and, of course, my brothers, my sisters, and everything else. So it was a very difficult time. The things that would happen from this point forward would really be a lot to do with, my decisions. Through the early 90s to mid 90s, our initial building where my mom and dad started on Hickory Street literally was packed almost like a maze, where there were tubs and containers full of parts all over the factory, everywhere you look.
Every building expansion that Kapco's ever had, including the creation of the Badger Circle location, came up because a new customer came knocking in on the door. And Kapco's never been afraid to invest in people, equipment, whatever it takes. Atwood Automotive came to us with seat rails for the Chrysler cars. It required the purchase of a 600-ton press that we didn't have and 5 smaller presses for subsequent operations that we didn't have. So how fast can we put up a new place? We wound up doing robots here. Came up with a way to take 7 robots, put them in close proximity of each other within feet, have them operate 5 presses, and they didn't hit one another. The automotive industry couldn't figure out how to do that, but we did it here, and we wound up in the cover of Metal Stamping magazine for it. Once this 80,000 square foot building got built and some of the equipment came here, and got it up and running and all that, it's like, now how else are we gonna fill this space? Fabrication is something at that time we weren't doing. We came across an opportunity to turn around and go to an auction, and it eventually just took off and grew. The next thing I was looking at was the purchase of our first laser. And then after the first one, it's like, we need another one. Within a year, it's like I've got 3 of them.
It's just kind of one thing led to the next, to the next. And my brother was like, man, I can't believe you're doing this. Like, okay, I can see buying one of those turret punch presses, but I bought 3 of them. And those hours of that day were the time in which we effectively said by bidding, we're moving into the fab world. And it really became the next big jump forward for us to be able to go from that period of time into really expanding our company. And so when the big crisis came for so many manufacturers in 2007, 2008, 2009, we were almost unscathed. We had strong demand at that period of time. By the time 2010-ish came, we were kind of not just Kapco Metal Stamping, but we were Kapco Metal Stamping and fabrication.
You look how Kapco started and where it is today. Is pride a good enough word? It's come a long way.
I think our big scenario right now is trying to figure out what this could lead to. Providing jobs for people is nice. Giving back to the community is nice. Helping somebody who's hungry is nice. Putting some clothes on someone's back is nice. Providing toys for kids who maybe don't have toys is nice. But the focus today is that enough? Is that our why? Is our why something bigger and more bold? And I submit that it is. I think if we can focus on individuals and unleash their own internal limits that they place upon themselves, we're going to be able to help people fulfill the ultimate goal and objective for all of us is to live that best life we possibly can. We only get one shot. That is the gift that Mom and Dad started.
You can't imagine how much I appreciate everybody coming here today. God bless you all. I really appreciate this. This is overwhelming.